Hello, hello.
Hello! Alright, MBTI time. I know a lot of people know me mainly for astrology, so we'll just talk about this real quick. What is MBTI? The myers-briggs system is a psychological system comprised of 16 different types. I'm an ENFP, spoiler alert. Excuse me. And basically, the 16 different types are based off of 4 different dichotomies. We have extrovert and introvert, so the E, I kind of use myself as a case example. We have extrovert versus introvert, so I'm an extrovert. Intuitive versus sensor, I'm an intuitive, and what that means is basically I'm more focused on the abstract than the sensor, the material realm. Feeler versus thinker, I tend to lead with my feelings first, on my Leo energy, and my Cancer energy, my Pisces energy, and my Aries energy. And of course, we all have our thinking components. So as an ENFP, for example, my tertiary function is extroverted thinking, so I think very extroverted, hence why I like doing videos and talking about these ideas and helping other people understand them and learning from other individuals as a primary mode of my mind in this world. And then P versus J. P is more flexible, more loose, more outgoing, not outgoing, more free-flowing and more go with the flow. That's what I was trying to say. And J is a little bit more structured, more routine, whatnot. So it takes all of us. There's no such thing as one type being better than the other. It takes all of us to make this world be what it is, and everybody has their beautiful gifts and challenges, just like with astrology. That's why I love this system so much, is it's the same idea of all of these different energies or these different types interconnecting, and all the different patterns are fascinating. So now that we've talked about that, I want to talk about, actually specifically a little bit more about that, about how all the different types interact. So utilizing my type as an example, what I want to study in today's video, is how the other signs of your function family, how important it is to understand them, to learn from them, and to grow from them as well. So what I mean by function family, and this is terminology that I'm kind of inventing because I don't, as far as I know, nobody else utilizes this, even though other people are also familiar with this concept, is every type has 4 functions, right? So for example, ENFP has extroverted intuition, introverted feeling, extroverted thinking, and introverted sensing. To study what all that is in more depth, again, that's going to be for other videos that, oh wow, I haven't done those videos yet. I really need to do those. Anyways, well, there's plenty of information online if you just Google MBTI, extroverted thinking, what is it, and that'll be helpful. So, like I was saying, every type of the 16 types has 4 functions. And it's going to be different for each type. There's no other type that has the exact same 4 functions. There might be for example, ENFP and then ESFP have the 2 middle functions the same. Introverted feeling for our auxiliary function, for our tertiary function, extroverted thinking. But ultimately they have different dominant functions, inferior functions, or challenge functions, I like to think of it, because inferior sounds so negative. But so it's good to know what type you are, but then it's good to then explore what are my functions, what does that mean for me, and really it all is tied up. And ENFP has to have dominant extrovert intuition. That's why we're so zany and so like, whoa, over here, symbols, oh my god, wow, learning, oh wow, it's connections, patterns, exactly what I do all the time with this channel, or just in life in general. So it's really valuable, like I was saying, for this video I want to discover the function families. Every single type is linked up with 3 other types, that 2 of them seemingly very different from them, and 1 seemingly very similar, but regardless, they're all actually very similar. So there's an easy way to know what the other types in your function family is. So again, utilizing ENFP as the model, whatever your type is, look to the extroverted or the introverted, whichever the other one is, and then that's going to be one of your types in your function family to learn from and to grow from, etc. So for example, as an ENFP, I'm an extrovert, so we look at the introverted INFP, introverted intuitive feeler perceiver. Now these 2 are going to be in the same function family. So if you're an INFP, ENFP is in your function family, and if you're an ENFP, INFP is in your function family. And again, function family is the 3 other types that have your exact same functions, different order, hence why it's great to learn from these individuals, because they're going to be really strong in certain ways that you might not be as strong as. And in fact, especially 2 of the types in your function family are going to be very strong in stuff that you actually need to develop and to grow and to to be aware of in the first place. So all the better to be friends with such individuals, to learn about them through the internet, to learn about really successful individuals who have been able to bring out the best in themselves, etc. So, and that goes also for the type that's very similar to you. So for example, ENFP and INFP are really similar. Let's study this real quick. Then we'll go into the other two. So ENFP, as I said, has extroverted intuition, introverted feeling, tertiary is extroverted thinking, and then the last one is introverted sensing. Okay, and INFP, and like for anybody's types, again, there all of these patterns exist for all of the different function families. Okay, so an INFP, or let's be more broad, the introverted or the extroverted function, I don't know how to put that, partner for, say you're an ENFJ, okay, the INFJ. Say you're an ISTP, okay, the ESTP. You know, the extroverted or introverted version of yourself, if you will, that's one way to put it. They are going to have the same functions as you have, but the first two are going to be swapped, and then the last two are going to be swapped. So, what does this mean? An INFP, okay, we'll study these two. ENFP, extroverted thinking, introverted feeling, right? For their first two. INFP has introverted feeling, the ENFP second function, and then extroverted intuition. Did I say thinking? I'm sorry. For ENFP, extroverted intuition, introverted feeling. Okay? And INFP has, I'm sorry for my British, this means fuck you in England. I don't mean to be, okay, I'll just kind of throw that in there. You know I don't mean it. INFP is introverted feeling and then extroverted intuition. So again, the same two functions, but swapped, right? And then the last two, extroverted thinking as an ENFP is my third function, and then my fourth function is introverted sensing. And then an INFP, a third function is introverted sensing, so my fourth function, and then extroverted thinking, my third function. So again, swap, swap. And by the way, we're going in order of what is most comfortable to what is most challenging, what we have to work through. So our dominant function, we all feel really naturally in our dominant function. For me, ideas, learning, growing, having extroverted intuition as my dominant, teaching while learning, while growing, while studying, you know, putting together, just perceiving and studying symbols and how they all interact and all these different patterns, that's natural for me, right? Now, next, introverted feeling. Okay, our auxiliary function is still pretty natural for us, but it's not quite as natural as our dominant function. So when it comes to my feelings, I can sometimes get so caught up in symbols and studying and learning and growing my awareness of patterns and whatnot, and possibilities and potential, that sometimes my feelings have been a little bit difficult to be able to factor into the situation. And ultimately we grow as time goes on to be able to master all four functions. Well, that's the goal anyways. Like with astrological energies as well, it's not necessarily a given that we bring out the best in ourselves, bring out the best in our energies. And that's why these systems exist, not to try and categorize us or to limit us in thinking, no, this is who we are, we're only going to be able to do this, we're stuck with this, etc. It's never fatalistic, at least from my perspective, and I've been doing this for a long time. And yeah, there's always the potential to be able to grow, especially with awareness and practicing what we learn from that awareness and getting better and persevering. So then you have the tertiary function, and for everybody this is the same kind of, even though the functions are different, it's the same kind of general structure of dominant, very, very comfortable, kind of like our go-to thing. Auxiliary, okay, still pretty in the comfort zone. In our adolescence, we learned how to strengthen our particular auxiliary function. So as an ENFP, my introverted feeling, okay. Then tertiary, in young adulthood, so young to mid-20s, even later 20s, and everybody's going to be different, everyone's going at their own pace, but that's generally how it functions. We either develop our tertiary function or we don't. This is kind of the great divide between the first two and the last two functions. A lot of people just kind of get stuck. After adolescence, they only focus on these first two, and of course everybody needs to be able to balance. Just like I say with astrological energies, we can learn from all of these different energies. We're meant to learn from all these different energies. So if we don't have a lot of earth in our chart, for example, I don't have a lot of earth, or if you don't have a lot of air, fire, water, whatever, we can and we should learn from other individuals who have a lot of those energies and become more well-rounded, become greater, wiser, stronger, more effective, more aware, because we all have beautiful gifts, even though it's called the inferior or the challenging function, and even though the tertiary function can be a little bit difficult for us, ultimately there are beautiful gifts there to be able to contribute to our life, quality of life, our well-being, and to the world at large. So I don't want you to thinking that, oh, this is my inferior, my challenging function, so I'm always going to be bad at that. That's not the case at all. It's just that we need to bring awareness and to balance it out, because other parts of us are a lot more naturally developed, stronger, as our gut impulse or gut influence. So yeah, for example, for me as an ENFP, and then again we'll get into the function families in a little bit, right after this actually, because as an ENFP, introverted sensing is my inferior function, is my challenge, and then again tertiary is extroverted thinking. We'll get back to developing the tertiary in a second, but the inferior function, I've always had introverted sensing there. It's just been drowned out, especially when younger, and it wasn't quite as developed as my extroverted intuition. So I wasn't asking myself so much, even putting it that way is very extroverted intuition. I wasn't feeling my body as much. That's what introverted sensing or sensing in general is all about, the material realm, the earth realm, feeling. So I went through years, for example, in my younger 20s, of addiction, just torturing my body out of a lack of awareness of it, a lack of good practices toward it, and focusing too much on my feelings, getting caught in my auxiliary function of introverted feeling and try to drown out certain feelings. And that was really challenging. But now, at this point in my life, after years of having overcome that addiction, because I studied what was going on within myself physically and how that correlated emotionally and what I needed to say and be able to do to be able to grow and to move on from that chapter of my life. To bring greater awareness and to practice that awareness. Now I go to the gym regularly. I don't meditate as much now, but I did a lot of meditation and yoga in my later 20s, especially my mid-20s, my earlier 20s, more so my mid-20s. But anyways, and I sought to be at peace with just being, instead of focusing on the future all the time, like extroverted intuition, and as an ENFP, that compels me to do. Well, not really compels, but influences me to do. I decided to go more simple, more introverted sensing, my inferior function, and develop where I was naturally weak when I was younger. And also, just one last thing about this, and then we'll get back into the function families, is the extroverted thinking, the tertiary function. I developed that throughout my 20s, going to school, graduating from a university in languages, 1 French, 1 degree in Spanish, and just continuing to learn as much as possible, to continue to grow. Doing this YouTube channel actually has been extremely helpful, life-changing, of being able to explain and to think, and getting feedback from YouTube comments, because I still check out YouTube comments all the time. I'm fascinated by other people's thoughts and analyses and opinions, and like, wow, that's really excellent, and wow, that person is not utilizing their mind at all. It's very, very much more so the former, of people being really awesome and developing incredible analyses and offering them, and I'm so grateful for them, thank you. And then the latter is more funny than any. They're more trolling and whatever, anyways. But yeah, that's been a huge development too. So the reason we went into that foray before we go into the last 2 function families, and then we discovered the function families for all the different types, is I just want to show you from my personal development, my introverted sensing. I want to show you from my personal experience and my memories how important it is to grow and to continue to be growing. Not to say, as always, I'm always growing, always learning. I never am going to stop, because that's death, really. I mean, that's like inner death, and I never want to experience that. Outer death, okay, fine, whatever. When it's time, it's time. But inner death, no, we don't need to experience inner death. And it's important to not stagnate. It's important to keep going forward if we want to be happy, if we want to be content, if we want to be able to have massive success and to be able to maintain that success. Because otherwise, we might find success with our dominant in our auxiliary functions. But if we don't develop our more weak or our parts of ourselves that we're not aware of, then they'll bite us in the ass. And why would we experience that? Why would we need to experience that? We don't need to, We can avoid all that. We can just learn and grow aware of it without having to go through it the hard way and the painful way. So that's what this is all about, is learning about the different types in our function families to be able to be wise about what we're naturally not good at. And it's humbling. It's not necessarily a pleasant experience, but it's a hell of a lot more pleasant, especially if we embrace it, than having to learn the hard way. So the other two types in any person's function family is going to be, so we have, for example, as the case model, right? We got ENFP, we have INFP. Now we have two other types, because in each, there are 4 different function families grouped of 4 different types each. And by the way, this is something that isn't really widely discussed in MBTI. Again, other individuals out there have these concepts, but I don't think they necessarily understand just how important it is. At least a lot of people, I don't think, necessarily understand how important it is to study these, because most people group the types, which is very valid, but most people group the types more so off of similarities, like say the NF types, the SF types, the NT types, the ST types, and that's very valid too, very important, it's good. Those are kind of like the grouping as per astrological terminology of, okay, the fire signs, okay, the water signs, okay, the air signs, the earth signs. They're much more similar. The function families are interesting because I don't really know if there's necessarily, I guess, actually I think there is. I think the square relationships in astrology is similar to the function families that I'm talking about. So Cancer, all the cardinal energies, all the mutable energies, all the fixed energies. So you got Cancer, Capricorn, or Cancer, Aries, Capricorn, Libra, for example. They're all really similar, just like with the 4 in any function family in MBTI, but they're very different as well. 2 of them are really similar, again, so you have the extroverted to introverted flip for whatever your type is, ENFP to INFP, whatever, what's one I haven't said, INTJ to ENTJ, right, very similar. So you have the for example, like Cancer and Capricorn, very similar. Then you have Libra and Aries, they're similar, but they tend to clash with these two, with Cancer and Capricorn, just like Leo and Scorpio and Taurus and Aquarius do, just like Gemini, Virgo, Pisces, and Sagittarius do. And it's interesting because square relationships are actually some of the most helpful for being able to grow. So these function family relationships are some of the most helpful for us to grow, but they do require a lot of patience, a lot of understanding, allowing people to talk to you and interact with you in ways that you normally wouldn't necessarily be attracted to or necessarily directly run into in your life. You have to go kind of out of your way. You got to stretch yourself to grow, not changing who you are or pretending to be someone you're not, but indeed to explore parts of yourself that are underdeveloped and aren't as present. So as an example, okay, so spoiler alert, right? We'll get into the last 2 function families and then how I've interacted with individuals of these 2, the last 2, to be able to learn more about myself. A quick thing about INFP, again, I've had a lot of really close, I still do have a lot of really close INFP friends who've taught me about different parts of myself, and vice versa. Like I've taught them, well, first they've taught me how to be a little bit more focused on my introverted feeling and my introverted sensing, because it's a little bit more natural for them because they're keyed into those introverted functions a lot more, as well as extroverted intuition because that's their auxiliary function. So they've taught me how to be a little bit more focusing on, no, well, how do you feel about this? Like, don't worry about all the possibilities and the potential in extroverted intuition and extroverted thinking, because as an extrovert, our primary and our tertiary functions actually kind of go together. Again, it's kind of interesting because tertiary is across that great divide, but it's a lot more natural for us than, say, our inferior function, because our first function is either extrovert or introvert, depends on if you're an E or an I, and then our tertiary is going to be the exact same. So if you're an extrovert, it's extroverted. For me, ENFP, extroverted intuition, introverted feeling, extroverted thinking. Say you're an INTJ, introverted intuition, extroverted thinking, introverted feeling. So these 2 kind of go together really nicely. And sometimes it's called, I believe it's called to be in the grip of the tertiary, where it's just if you're very extroverted, you're just not necessarily paying attention to your introverted functions. You kind of hop over your auxiliary, and especially you don't even pay attention to your inferior function, and you just go from your first to your third, back and back. So for example, as an ENFP, just information, give me more information. I just need to think about information. I don't know about how I feel about it. I don't know about how my body feels right now. I haven't gotten enough sleep. I haven't eaten, etc. That's the grip of ENFP. So the type that's right next to us is really helpful, and vice versa. So for example, as an INFP, INFP friends and whatnot, they help me as an ENFP because they help me to learn about those other 2, introverted feeling and introverted sensing, in a really powerful way, because that's their first and their third function. And again, function. Auxiliary function comes naturally to us as human beings, so they give me really great perspectives on extroverted intuition that I hadn't considered before too, and when to use it, when not to use it, when to chill from our dominant function. That's something that's really helpful. Is this person in the function family honestly you're gonna be able to spend a lot more time around this person most likely. So again, if you're an ESTJ, this would be an ISTJ, an ENFP, it's an INFP, the extroverted or introverted version of your energies, of your type. They'll be able to a lot more smoothly teach you about other parts of yourself that aren't quite as developed. At the same time, they might be a little bit too similar. Again, every relationship has its gifts and its challenges. There's no such thing as one relationship better than another, or one type, one energy, or whatever. So, at the same time, you might be too similar in the sense of both of you have whatever your function is, whatever your function family is, whatever your type is. You and your extroverted or introverted equivalent are still going to have the tertiary and inferior functions one way or the other. So again, I have extroverted thinking and then introverted sensing for my tertiary and inferior. INFP has introverted sensing and then extroverted thinking for their inferior, or their tertiary and inferior. So that's why it's important to get to know, well, to be aware of that in the first place, right? And to help each other focus on that stuff. So in that case specifically, to be more practical, to make sure we're being logical, not just focusing on feelings and potential, etc., like that, to be more just taking care of the basic necessities, which are essential for success in life and survival, let alone thriving. But again, that's where the other two types in our function family come from, and rather where they come in. So using ENFP as a case study, the next type is ESTJ. And we'll just get to the last one. The last one is ISTJ. So how do we know what other types are in our function families? We take our type. We have the extroverted or introverted equivalent. So I'm an ENFP, INFP, right? We then go to, there's one other type that's an extrovert in all of our function families. So there's 2 extroverts, 2 introverts in all of the function families. Also, I guess, 2 feelers, 2 thinkers, and 2 intuitives, there's a nice balance actually, I never considered that. 2 intuitives, 2 sensors, and then 2 Ps and 2 Js. It depends on what your type is to see which ones are there, but that's ultimately what it's going to be. It's going to be a balance. And that's why it's important for all of us to be able to learn from these other types in our function families, because then we can truly become well-rounded, and that's where our beautiful strength is, our contentment, etc. And we can be successful and hold on to our success and maintain our success for our entire lives. So ESTJ. How do we get ESTJ? Well, whatever your type is, so again, using ENFP as an example, we take the first letter and then we change the rest of them. So ENFP, extroverted, intuitive, feeler, perceiver. We take the first one, E, and again, this works if you're an introvert too, whatever it is, you take the first letter, change the rest of them, and then you have this type in the function family. Kind of like 2 steps removed from your type, in a sense, right? So ENFP, ESTJ, extroverted, sensing, thinker, judger. I'm just thinking, one of my best friends is ESTJ, and one of my best friends growing up is ESTJ too, and just it's beautiful to meet somebody else. It's funny because you think like, oh, I'm an ENFP, ESTJ is so different, or I'm a ENFJ. What would that be? ESTP. ESTP is so different, so very different. They're incredibly similar. Yes, they lead with different parts, but they're very similar. So, for example, to break down the functions, this type, this kind of like 2 steps removed type, is going to have the same dominant and tertiary functions as you, but flipped. And as I was saying before, whatever your dominant and your tertiary functions are, regardless of type, is very natural for you to kind of like loop those and to kind of understand that very effectively. And so it's nice to have somebody else in your life, especially a friend who you get to see often and kind of help each other grow. It's again, these relationships aren't just like, oh yeah, cool, like we just hang out, we like the same interests. That's more the E and I equivalent. This person is somebody who's in your life who is very different from your usual. For example, as an ENFP, I spend a lot of time around other artists. I spend a lot of time around other feelers. Even doing readings. I mean, I do readings for all types, thank God, because otherwise it gets so bored. but in general, I do a lot of readings for usually like NF types who are interested in psychology, like I am. Again, I've done readings for every single type out there. I have no preference. I love, the only preference I have is to be able to do readings for everybody of all sorts of different backgrounds and belief systems and ideas and geographical locations and demographics and all of that. I love all of that. But in general, I tend to find that I do a lot of readings for feeler types because, I mean, it makes sense. A lot of feelers are drawn to understanding more about their feelings, about other people's feelings, how to have better relationships. Again, not saying that ST or NT types aren't interested in that. Of course they are. We're all human. We all have all these different functions. And especially, as I was saying, we need to grow and to develop all these different functions. But in general, that tends to be the interest. Whereas an ST type might be more interested in learning the mechanics of how a car works, or how a system functions, or something like that. That's just their general field of interest. So like I said, it's all good. It's all good. Like I said, we all just need to stretch ourselves and to grow a little bit. And actually, how I met my ESTJ friend and my ISTJ friend also was in studying Kung Fu, which of course, of studying the ST type. And it's funny because then we also have an INFP friend, so we have all 4 different types there. That's really great. It's really, really great. But I had to stretch myself a little bit because for me, I'd never studied. I've always been interested in martial arts, and this is last year when I started studying Kung Fu. And that branched out into my ESTJ friend, who's an expert nutritionist and personal trainer. I mean, just unreal. I keep encouraging him to do a YouTube channel because he would help so many different people, but he's a little shy in that regard with that. It doesn't matter. That's private stuff. But that's a field where, of course, I'm interested. Of course, it's good for me. I should say I'm interested because I have awareness of, okay, well, if I want to have the best songwriting musical career possible, if I want to be the best psychologically in learning possible, if I want to have the maximum amount of energy to be able to grow in all different parts of life, I need to take care of my body better. I need to learn more. And that's my tertiary and introverted, inferior functions: extroverted thinking, introverted sensing, learning more about how the body functions, being more in tune with my body. For me, again, it's very natural to learn about a million different things, and I know a bunch of different things, and that's great. But I needed that help. I needed to put myself in a situation where it was a very ST situation, and I think martial arts is probably one of the most ST situations possible. Again, all sorts of people are welcomed into that dojo. All sorts of people are there. It's all good. Like I said, my INFP friend was there, and that's why I met him. But it's a very ST situation. So if you're on the other side, if you're an ST, it's good to focus on exposing yourself to an NF situation. Maybe going to like a metaphysical shop, or anything else that's like kind of hippy dippy. That's an NF thing, and that's important for you to be able to grow and to develop that side of you. Or if you're an an SF, to put yourself in an NT situation. One of my really amazing friends is ESFP, and he studied school, and I saw how great that was because that helped his extroverted thinking, his tertiary function, and his introverted intuition, his inferior function, to grow exponentially. And he's an incredibly intellectual human being. And it's funny because you think ESFP and you think, no, like that person's a party person. They just have fun. They're a performer, and yeah, he's a musician, and yeah, he's an ESFP. That's what he does. But he's an incredibly beautiful intellectual mind as well, and that's what's so essential for all of us. And when we really, I get goosebumps even thinking about it, when we bring out the best in ourselves is when we focus on what we don't comfortably focus on, and it's good to put ourselves in a situation. Like, I didn't go to some dojo where I was like being tortured. It was a fantastic dojo. It's awesome. I felt like I was a family there. I still do. I still feel like I'm a part of that family, and it's really beautiful. So it fit me. It's not like we have to torture ourselves, but we do have to push ourselves and be a little bit uncomfortable and do things that, like going into that dojo, was I respected as a musician, psychologist? Absolutely. And I felt like I was at home, but at the same time, I'm there to learn. I'm there to be humble. I'm there to just let other people show me really things about myself even that I didn't know, and things about the body. I learned so much this last year, and I still have so much to learn, as we all do with all of the different functions, but especially the ST. And I still get together regularly with my ESTJ friend, my INFP friend, and I need to go and see my ISTJ friend as well, to be able to stay well-rounded and stay growing and to continue to learn more about the body. And then that it's incredible how everything correlates to all the different parts of our lives. So stretching and learning that other part, is so good for us and so helpful. so necessary, really, if we want to experience the fullness and the richness of what life has to offer, and to experience relationships that we otherwise wouldn't experience. So as I was saying, focusing on this 2 steps removed, my ESTJ friend, or whatever type it is for you, is going to have the tertiary. It's kind of like, basically, if you just like kind of cut the tertiary and the inferior, if you copy and paste that and put it at the beginning, that's what that person's functions are going to be. So as an ENFP, extroverted intuition, introverted feeling, extroverted thinking, introverted sensing. ESTJ, extroverted thinking, right, my 3rd, introverted sensing, my 4th, extroverted intuition, my 1st, introverted feeling, my 2nd. And it's a beautiful reciprocity where I teach him, like, again, and it requires a lot of patience. It requires a lot of being willing to have certain things called out about yourself, which I'm very willing, so is my friends. We've spent so much time in life learning and growing and just seeking to be humble and seeking to learn about ourselves and knowing that we don't know everything, which is important, especially for our 2 types. And there are times when both of us, and he has to call me out and be like, listen, like, you're not being practical enough. I love you, you know I do, but you're not being practical enough. Like, you need to bust your ass, you need to put your ass in gear. And I'm like, you're fucking right. And then vice versa, there are times when I'm like, hey, maybe you should be a little bit more emotionally considerate. Maybe, his inferior is introverted feeling. And so for me, that's very natural. Introverted feeling, that's my auxiliary. I know how I feel. I know how to deal with other people's feelings. That's like what I learned in adolescence, But that's his challenge. So we help each other. This function with this other type in the function family helps each other really nicely. Because they are similar, they're not the exact opposite, and we'll get into that in a second, because there's so many beautiful things for our kind of exact opposite as well. But this type, it's good to, again, it's not going to be necessarily as much time spent around this person as the equivalent, because again, with an INFP, it's like, like, oh, you want to make music? Oh, great, that's what I do. I make music. Cool. Like, let's make music together. Okay. My ESTJ friend has different interests. He loves music, but he's into different interests, so we align on stuff that, we get together, we talk about life, and that's kind of where I get to express my strengths and say, hey, well, what about this? What about that possibility? That's where my dominant and his tertiary go well together too, because his extroverted thinking, his dominant, my tertiary, he helps me to kind of organize my mind, make sure I'm not fooling myself, make sure I'm staying focused, making sure I'm staying practical, right? Introverted sensing as well, my challenge. And then I get to offer possibilities of, well, what if you did this? Extroverted intuition, and then his tertiary. So it's nice with this type because you have a natural flow. You're able to help each other understand pretty easily, because as long as both individuals are humble, they're not trying to control the other, they're not projecting onto the other, saying, out of a lack of self-awareness, like, for example, as an ENFP to an ESTJ, if I wasn't very focused on staying humble and staying aware and staying open-minded and letting people just think what they think and say what they say, etc., and do what they do, I could get very judgmental. As an ENFP, that's a big challenge. And actually, as an ESTJ as well, but for different purposes. An ENFP could be very ironically saying, that person is so narrow-minded, I'm not even going to talk to them. And maybe that person is very narrow-minded, or maybe they're not. Maybe we're the ones being narrow-minded. Again, we have to have a good self-awareness. We have to have a good patience about ourselves and not project onto other people, because it's so often, no matter what our type might be, I mean we as human beings, not ENFP as human beings, whatever our type might be, we might, if we're not self-aware, we can very much project onto other people. So that's really important. So beautifully, my ESTJ friend is incredibly open-minded, incredibly humble, and just like myself. And so there are times when we kind of rub each other the wrong way sometimes, but ultimately we go, all right, whatever, your life, it's all good, that's your opinion, all right, I hear you, it is what it is. And slowly but surely we develop unparalleled courses, and it's really beautiful. I mean, I could honestly even cry thinking about it, because he's such a great friend to me, and we're so good for each other, and I just know it's a lifelong friendship, and we continue, we're interested in what the other is a specialist and expert at, and what's cool is we learn from each other, but we each also continue to push ourselves to learn from each other, but also in our main thing. I'm not going to suddenly become an ESTJ. I'm never gonna spend more time on the stuff that he does. For example, the ST stuff, like going to the gym like 4 hours a day. I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna play music for 4 hours a day, but then I'm gonna go to the gym and apply the principles that he's taught me, or maybe go and do kung fu with him and whatnot. Just as he's not going to be as interested as like talking about psychology and stuff like that. I'm laughing because I'm thinking of the time I told him, hey, you know, check out this system. I think you'd like it. You're an ESTJ. And he's like, but at the same time, he heard me, and it was good. So it's great to have a friend that helps you with your weaknesses, that you understand beautifully. And again, it takes a lot of patience, a lot of humility, and on both people's ends. So it's a real gift when you find somebody that helps you to develop in that way, and again, helps you to consciously develop your inferior and your tertiary functions. Yeah. So okay, the last function family person is, if you take your type, so for example ENFP, and you go to the exact opposite of every single letter, that is the last person in your function family. So ENFP, and then the extroverted or introverted equivalent, INFP, and then keep the first letter, change the last 3 letters, ENFP, ESTJ, okay? Now we take every letter and we do the exact opposite, E, I, N, S, F, T, P, J, ISTJ. So ISTJs are the exact opposite equivalent to ENFPs and vice versa. This is hilarious because every single type out there has this. Again, these patterns exist for all of them. It's a fully comprehensive system. There's no type that doesn't have an equivalent to the different function families, right? The different function family types. So, and invariably, it's like, oh, I'm an INFJ. ESTPs are the exact opposite of me. Now, to be fair, INFJs are usually very wise and understanding of patterns, so they usually understand that that's not necessarily the case. But in any case, all of us can fall into that trap, either subconsciously or consciously, of thinking this person's vastly different from me. I should have nothing to do with them. It's the same thing with astrology. There's no such thing as, like, they're all connected. They're all connected. There are no 2 signs that are the exact, you know, I mean, not to mention opposite signs are actually more similar than not. But then say like Leo and Capricorn, okay, yes, they're very different in many ways, but they also have incredible similarities, and we could break that down for every single combination of the 12 different energies. Well, the same thing with the types. And actually, these two types that are seemingly exact opposite are in the same function family. They have the same functions. They just have them in the opposite order. So they are incredibly helpful for being able to develop what's neglected, or what tends to be neglected in ourselves. So ENFP, extroverted intuition, first function. That's how should we illustrate this? Let's go one at a time. ENFP, extroverted intuition, introverted feeling, extroverted thinking, introverted sensing, okay? ISTJ, introverted sensing, extroverted thinking, introverted feeling, extroverted intuition. So this is incredibly helpful because, for example, ISTJ, actually a great friend of mine, Kung Fu Master, he was incredibly able to help me to simplify and to chill the fuck out. Now, ESTJ helped tremendously with that too. And again, these two, seen from a different perspective, ESTJ and ISTJ are the extrovert introvert equivalent, right? So say an ESTJ, they're going to look at me in the same way as I look at them. And ISTJ is going to be their equivalent. And then the exact opposite, ESTJ, INFP. Right? That's going to be their exact opposite. So again, it's all cool, all these different patterns. But anyways, so my ISTJ friend, and I've had a couple of really amazing ISTJ friends who have been extremely helpful. I was raised by an ISTJ, my stepfather, who were very helpful to be able to help me to grow in ways that were very foreign to me. Even more so than my ESTJ friend. I mean, not saying the growth was more. They're just different. I mean, same with INFP. There's this different growth, but it being so different, when one person's dominant is the other person's inferior function, and vice versa, that is a relationship where you cannot help but face the most challenging parts of who you are, and that goes both ways. And again, sometimes that can be very difficult, and I find with ISTJ friends, we spend a little bit less time around each other, because I don't wish to generalize. I'm thinking more of a friend I had years ago, actually, we tend to spend less time around each other because it's such a like heavy lesson for each other. Now what's beautiful is we're able to learn so much and to grow so much, and especially as time goes on and as we become mature and wiser, we're able to be around each other and not feel threatened because, you know, not feel threatened or rather insecure, inadequate, because we've developed with our inferior functions, we've developed with our tertiary functions. So even though we recognize that that person is a master of something that for us is quite challenging. So for example, in my case, in my friend's case, I actually, in several of my, all three of my, the three individuals who've been really instrumental in my life have been ISTJ. They are masters of something that's very difficult for me. They're very great, amazing, fantastic at routine and just doing one thing over and over and over again until they become a master at it. I'm an ENFP. I do this, that leads to this, that leads to that, that leads to that. I'm developing all of those at the same time. It's all expanding, you know? At the same time, that's what I'm a master at, and that's what they're challenged at, where they're like, wait, but I need to stay focused on that. I provide possibilities. They provide me focus. I provide possibilities. It's challenging, and again, a lot of awareness is needed. And again, I want you, whatever your type is, I want you to be thinking about what your type is, because whatever the specific, you know, fill in the blank here, they keep me blank. You know, for me and my type, my opposite type, ISTJ, they keep me focused. I keep them open. Whatever it is, it's essential. It's essential for both types to grow. It's essential for all of us to grow. And so, like I was saying, it's tricky, because when somebody is inadvertently not trying to, you know, because again, a lot of humility is needed as well. You don't want to try and control anybody. It's really essential. Just focus on your own development in life. Everything will be well. It doesn't matter what your type is. With our opposite types, we tend to want to step in and help, sometimes too much, to the point of trying to control, especially if they're a friend, to try and mold them, maybe unhealthily, try to fix them or whatever. You know, we have to be patient with other people, and we have to be also wise in making sure that we're not focusing on other people too much to our own expense. For example, with ISTJs, at certain points in the past, I focused too much on trying to provide them opportunities, possibilities, ideas, etc., when really I should have been focusing more, you know, in general it's a really beautiful thing, but when doing it too much, I really should have been focusing on making sure that I was also learning from them and staying more focused on what I needed to get done, making sure I was taking care of the simple but necessary basic fundamentals of life, of eating, sleeping, taking care of business, etc., in a very routine way, so that things slowly but surely build up. Because by focusing too much on them, I was unconsciously denying my responsibility and my necessity of making sure that I was growing and taking care of what I needed to make sure that I was growing slowly but surely, whereas I was actually kind of imploding slowly but surely because I wasn't taking care of myself. I'm thinking specifically during the addiction years. And vice versa, I've also experienced, more so in the past, not with my Kung Fu awesome friend who's an ISTJ, but growing up, there were a couple of ISTJs that were more focused on trying to criticize me and put me in a box, when in reality they needed to focus on expanding their own visions of what was possible and to ask questions. You know, that's something else about extrovert intuition, is I ask questions all the time. I have no shame about asking questions. I love to ask questions. Sometimes, actually, you know, it can make people a little uncomfortable because it's like, what the fuck is this person so curious about me for, you know? Or it can lead them down the wrong path. I'm like, oh, they really like me. I'm like, I'm not flirting with you. I just want to learn, you know? So for the ISTJ, that was really important to learn from their opposite type, ENFP, of how to expand their vision. So it's tough. It's tough to be that aware and to practice that awareness. It's also tough to make sure that we stay humble and growing and deal with that. And to be fair, again, there might be times when you're just like, I'm exhausted. I don't really have time to focus on this part of my life that is foreign to me, and I know that my really good friend or teacher or whoever is a master of. I just don't have, I'm not at that place yet. I will though. You know, that's what's important, is just making sure that we're open to it and that we do set time aside to be able to develop that part of our lives, and to not make excuses and make sure that we grow in that respect. That's really essential. and to learn from that type that is our exact opposite. Because again, they're more similar than not. They're in the same function family. They have all of the same functions that we do. They just have it in a different order. And again, actually, them having an exact opposite can be extremely helpful for being able to decode ourselves kind of inside out. It's incredibly helpful. So again, learn from your function families. And let's go through that real quick. So we've already covered the ENFP, INFP, ESTJ, ISTJ. That's one function family. I don't really have terms for them yet, but kind of to summarize, I would say that function family is about distillation of ideas, in a sense. We're kind of like filters in a way with those particular 4 functions, regardless of the order. We're all about taking in new ideas, but then getting to the core. That's kind of what that function family is about. So the next function family, we'll do ENTJ, INTJ, ESFP, ESFP, ISFP. That function family, it's really hard to generalize, because again, certain phrases could be used for like the ST types or the SF types or whatever. So, but in general, the ESFP, ISFP, ENTJ, INTJ, I would say is about like practical curiosity. That's a pretty good way. With the extroverted sensing and the extroverted thinking. Practical curiosity for the sake of fun, in a way, because ENTJ and INTJ also have so much fun with their curiosity. And of course, ESFP and ISFP are well known for having fun with their curiosity. So there's that. And then we have ENFJ, INFJ, ESTP, ISTP. These individuals are like the ultimate in like making teams happen. Again, I struggle to make these generalizations, these summaries, because that that kind of appeals to the NF types. But my argument is this: is for the ESTP, ISTP, ENFJ, INFJ, they all have extroverted feeling, and they also all have extroverted sensing, and they all fit really well into a team. It's a little bit different. ENFJ or ESTP might be kind of like the leader in a sense. ISTPs are the ones who are like the specialists, or the INFJs are like the specialists. But again, it's hard to generalize, but that's generally the generalization. Yeah, like making teams function. And then the last one is ENTP, INTP, ESFJ, ISFJ. I think this is the most funny function family to me, of just the seemingly disparity, because and ultimately all the different function families have very different. I mean, you look at an ENFP and an ISTJ, and it's like, really, they're the same functions? Like, yeah, any exact opposites, like INTJ to ESFP, or whatever. It's really fascinating. Like, wow, they're so similar. But I mean, they're so different. But then you can see the similarity, especially as they all grow and develop these other functions in their lives. And yeah, but I think what's really amusing to me is seeing ENTP and INTP, like the especially INTP being the like stereotypical genius energy, the individuals who, whether it's Einstein or Elon Musk, like just who come to Earth and have such a fascinating wavelength to offer and different ideas to offer that just it shapes the world so heavily. And then to imagine that they're the exact same type as ESFJ, which is like the ultimate like party host, friends host, like ultimate in making people happy. It's so fascinating, and it helps to illuminate so much about each other, because ESFJs and ISFJs are actually incredibly intelligent, but and ENTPs and INTPs are incredibly great at accommodating other people and making other people feel welcome. But again, only if they learn from each other, because otherwise they can be very stereotypically ENTPs, INTPs is like intellectual, I don't give a shit about other people's opinions, but then as they grow, they're like, okay, I do actually care about people, and I do want to make them happy and include them in the idea and the vision, and it's just fascinating to see that. Or the ESFJ and ISFJ, and it's like whoa, like ESFJ, ISFJ, like your calculations are fascinating, and like, wow, that's a great idea, and how did you, like, whoa, is this, and you're personable. It's just, it's beautiful to see that combination. And I think especially since INTPs are seemingly like so very different from everybody else, almost like aliens, to see that they're like in connection with ISFJs and ESFJs makes me so happy. Just that insight, that knowing that particular function family that gives us, because it's like the most lovable aliens ever. It's great, I love it. But so to summarize, I mean, that's actually pretty much how I'd summarize. It's like ingenious people benefiters. ENTPs challenge our conceptions and our ideas and help us to think more innovatively. INTPs bring beautiful technology to help people. ESFJs are ingenious and at making people feel welcome and to bring individuals together, you know, whether it's through conventions or running a team or something like that. Especially a team that's like directly focused on making people happier, a hotel, restaurant, etc., and taken care of. So maybe that's the best way to put it, is like ingenious caretakers. That's a good way to put it. And an ISFJ being excellent, usually masseuses or specialists with making people's bodies feel good and helping care for people in that way, and just continuing to learn techniques and to grow. It's awesome. So I hope this has been helpful. As always, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to include them in the section, the YouTube comment section. And I look forward to doing more MBTI videos, more astrology videos. I have so much stuff I want to do. I'm so excited. But any inspirations or ideas or suggestions, please, as always, I'm open to that too. Infinite love to you, my friends. Namaste. As always, I'm doing astrology readings. I do MBTI readings as well, but I usually include that with astrology because there's so much information available with astrology. Where really for MBTI you can get a lot of information online. So just tying together the insights of MBTI with astrology is really one of my specialties. So if you're interested in that, feel free to all the information for that is in the about section for the different readings I offer, and just ask for a natal chart reading and include your MBTI type if you like. And we could definitely focus on that, or different transits, the different energies at any given time, compatibility, romance, relationship stuff. Focus on that. By the way, transits, just to explain that a little bit better, is where the energies are at any given time and how that interrelates with ourselves as individuals in our natal chart. So yeah, there's so much stuff. I love doing all of this. I love being a filter of ideas and possibilities and potentials with my function family.